The internet world can hear us. All right, good afternoon. How is everyone today? Good. I'm so excited the room is full and that you all are excited about compliance, because I'm excited that you're excited. This makes me happy. The better we are at this process, the faster everyone gets paid and the more secure your license is, right? Because this is how we catch some of those big things that maybe go unnoticed to the naked eye, right? So welcome. I know most of you, I think pretty much everyone in the room, but for those who don't personally know me, I'm Kristen. I'm your assistant team leader here, your coach and your guidance. I support Scott and the staff. Really, they support me. They're amazing. So we have some of them in the room, and I'm really great that they're here to keep me on track and on point. And if I say something wrong, they are allowed to step up and tell me, because we want to make sure it's 100% in compliance. So you don't have to follow along on your computer. You are welcome to. I'm going to walk through the process. The beauty of this is I have printed out the step-by-step instructions that we're going to go over today. The other part of this is, most of you, for those of you in the room that are new, and I see a lot of wonderful new faces, so welcome. You have this already in your loop. Mary, who is our compliance coordinator, she emails this to you and puts it into your beautiful loop under Compliance Handbook. So all of these documents are digitally already prepared for you in the loop if you want some wonderful reading to put you to sleep at night. There's a bunch of it in there. But these are the most important pieces. This is going to be how do you set up your loop. We're going to walk through that. And also, what is the compliance process? What is expected of you? And how do you get paid? And who in here wants to be paid? All right, good. All right, okay. Right? That's all good. It's all good. So we have an hour today, so I'm going to go through a lot of this. It is interactive. If you are completely confused, please stop me and let me see if I can clarify for you. If you are having systems issues, just shut your computer. I will walk you through it later. The most important thing is that you take notes, because most of you will find that you need to call me probably about 10:30 at night because you're writing a deal and you don't know where to find something, and your sense of urgency is almost overwhelming. And although I love you, sometimes I am in bed by 10:30 and I want to take your call, yet I am asleep and I snore. So your ring has to be louder than my snore. Most of the time it's not. So I want you to be able to take notes, so that way if this is an urgent situation and you had to really figure this out for yourself, that you have the ability to do so. And yet, of course, staff is always here to take your calls or questions, or if you need clarification around something. So to make this a successful class, what are some of the most important things that you want out of it today? Julie.
What do I do when I submitted everything to Mary and I get an additional form?
And you get an additional form to add to it? Perfect question. We will answer that today. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And if I don't, for some reason I forget, please let me know. But we should touch on that, yes. What else? What else do you all want to get out today? We have experience in the room, but those who are just kind of trying their hand at it, what do y'all want out of this? Mark?
Learn something I didn't know.
Okay, something you need to know, and this is definitely, if you like to get paid, this is something you need to know. So great, we will definitely, and we'll talk about why. Why is it important that we we work the compliance process the way it's written out? Anybody else have something that they want to get out of today that we haven't touched on, or you don't think is going to be in the paperwork that I might need to be aware of?
So I have my first buyer's meeting tomorrow.
Congratulations.
I kind of need the paperwork prepared, so
Okay.
I can take it with me tomorrow.
That's right. Preparation. Oh my goodness. And thank you for getting your buyer's representation agreement prepared before you go show them houses. So I'm excited for that for you. Awesome. Okay, so we will touch on that. Julie? Okay. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. First and foremost, we're going to actually just start with building a loop, and then we're going to actually go over the compliance process. So the first and most important thing that I ask you to do, if you haven't worked transactions yet, and you're still just exploring what this looks like, it is okay to practice. You'll see a million loops open for me, and that's because I'm saving stuff and showing y'all things. I expect that you'll be practicing in DOTLOOP. You'll be figuring out how to upload things, how do you fill in things, how do you build your own templates. We're not going to get into the fancy stuff today on how to schedule tasks and all of that. I'm just going to teach you how do I build my loop, what should it look like, how do I submit it, how do I create a status, and then what do I do to get paid. Does that sound good, everyone? All right. I'm keeping the air down low. It's not going to offend me if you put a jacket on, but you don't want to see me sweat. So sorry about that ahead of time. All right, so the first thing is most of you have logged in. I think everyone's process was pretty smooth on where to find DOTLOOP. You can log into DOTLOOP directly. You don't have to go through mykw.kw.com. However, it's easy because most of us already have mykw up when we're working on average. So you're going to go ahead and open this up. And the first thing you did select from mykw.com was start my transactions, right under that little e-edge panel. So the next thing you're going to do, now this documentation, you're going to see a lot of click the red and black circle, the red circle with the plus. As you can see, that has changed, so you might want to just cross that out if you're a very analytical person that wants to look at the notes and see as they're written what it looks like. They're actually little squares with blue houses, so instead of a red circle with a plus. So make that note there because, again, at midnight you're going to go, there's no red circle with a plus, right? Unless you have the old look or the retro, I'm going to call it the retro look, you can make that happen if you choose. So, did they take it away? Okay, maybe they took it away. So, okay. So yours may look as though there's no loops, and that's okay, or if you're brand new, you will have the compliance handbook already up as a loop. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to add a loop, and if you'll see up here, I'm going to make this a little bigger. So right up here, a little fancy thing here, see right there, the add a loop. So that's what y'all will be pressing to add your loop. And when that pops up, what's going to happen is it's going to ask you for an address. So obviously, if you have a seller, your seller's address will go there. And as you start to type it in, a lot of times Google or whatever it's attached to will bring up the address. If it's in MLS, depending on who your MLS is, it will also bring that up and say, do you want to connect to this MLS listing? Yes, ma'am.
And sometimes you don't have an address.
Correct. So I'm going there next. So if you put the address, if you have the seller, typically what I will do, you don't have to, the address is fine. I will do the address and I will do a / and I'll put the last name of my buyers and then I'll do comma first name. And the reason why I do that is because I love it if an agent texts me and says, hey Kristen, can you take a look over my loop before I submit it? If they only give me a last name, it helps me to find things easier. I can find it. If it's in the loop, it'll bring it up, but it's just more clear if it's in the address line. So that's how I've always submitted. But an address is fine. If you have buyers, so Sheila is having her buyers, right? So she's going to start filling out the buyer's information, the representation agreement, the IBS. And the way she'll start her loop is typically last name, comma, first name. And if there's 2 buyers, then you can add, you know, Jane Ann, whoever, John Smith, okay? And of course, once you get that loop under contract, then you will go back and adjust the address, and I'll show you how to do that. So any questions on how to label the loop? All right. So see how Google brought that right up for me? And so I'll do that, and then okay, and then you'll click continue. Hello. Now, if there's a photo that you want to add to the loop, you're welcome to. That's awesome if you're that organized. Otherwise, just click done. Yes, ma'am.
If we have a photo instead of the blue house, would it bring up the photo?
Yes. Okay, and so now this is what the loop looks like. You can either create another loop, and if you're doing transaction management and you're just, you know, addressing loops, then you can do multiple at a time. Otherwise, you're just going to click View Loop. Okay, so this is what the start of a loop looks like. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to create kind of details of the loop. Now, honestly, the best thing to do is just to go to View Details first, and it's going to open up the Details section. There's a lot of information in here, especially if you have a buyer that you're not going to be using right off the bat. So that's okay. Don't freak out. It's okay. A lot of stuff you're going to fill as you go on. But the first thing you're going to do is add a person. And so when you're adding a person to the loop, if you plan on emailing them anything through the loop, you're going to need to have their email address. So I trust that before you enter in a buyer's representation or a listing agreement, you have already done some sort of pre-consultation, like what is your name, phone number, email address, and how can I get this information to you, and who all do I need to contact? Because if it's an LLC and you'll be sending things to numerous people to sign, normally there's like one person that signs. However, if there's a parent and children or whatever the situation might be, you're going to need everybody's contact information before you start to email out of the loop. So best practice, just get it ahead of time. Any questions on that part? Awesome. So you'll add in the full name, if you spell it right. And then, obviously I'm already in here, but, and then you'll pick a role. So the roles over here are going to be dependent on the situation, and you'll know ahead of time, at least for the basics of this, if they're a buyer or they're a seller, and obviously you have those choices here. Okay, so you can select either buyer or seller. And then it's going to ask for the address information, and you'll want to fill out as much as that as possible. Okay? Let's see, so I'm going to jump out, I'm going to go ahead and add person. Let's see if it'll allow me to do it. Okay, yeah, I'm already on here with the same email address. Let me see if it'll let me do my other one. All right, so now you can see that it's added me. Oh, sorry, I'm really over there. I should have done someone else's name, but over there, okay? Now, again, if you have the seller, you can start to go down and fill out some of the property information. Now, if you've linked it to the MLS and you have the buyer, a lot of this stuff will autofill based on what the MLS is. Just be careful of that. Double check that information, because it doesn't mean that the agent that entered stuff into MLS was 100% correct. So it's always good to measure twice, cut once, right? So make sure you just go over. It takes you just a couple extra seconds, because if you choose to autofill, this information will then be autofilled into the documents that you choose to fill out. Any questions on that? Okay. Y'all are doing great. We're just going to whiz right through this. Okay. So now that you've done this, we're going to go ahead and go back to the loop, and we're going to start by adding documents. So as you can see here, it says folder. Typically, you're going to start a loop with one or two things. Most of the time it's going to be the first, which is going to be a representation agreement of sorts, whether it's a listing or a buyer. The second thing that you're going to add to the loop is contractual documents. So best practice is to split those. Over here, if you guys see these three dots, woo, right there. If you click on that and you click rename, you can rename this folder. Why is that important? Trust me, if you have 20 things labeled folder in here, it's going to be hard to figure out which ones you're submitting or which ones compliance is supposed to look at. So however organized you want to be or fancy you want to make it, you would just rename that. Another folder that you might have in here is, let's say, who plans on going on vacation this year at any point? All right, great. So if you have loops that are active, whether you have active buyers, active listings, things under contract, anything that hasn't closed yet, you'll create a folder that says vacation itinerary or vacation. And that way, if someone were to call in on your property or from your clients, I can go in and see that you have a vacation itinerary in there. Okay, so that's another way you can add a folder in there. Okay, so you've labeled the folder. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to add documents. So you have 3 ways to add a document. The first one is templates, and those are typically put in there either through TR, which is Texas Realtors, or through our templates that Mary has put together for you, and we have office documents in there, office templates. So you name it, that's where that would be. The second one is browse, and that is, let's say you have a survey and you have it saved as a PDF file, because you can only upload PDF files to this system. So let's say you have a survey and you need to upload it. Well, then you would click browse, and then it would open your computer, and you can pick whichever file. I may not ever be able to get out of that though. Oh, there's cancel. I'm not a Mac user, so there we go. Okay, so you can pick the survey, and then the survey would then upload into your loop, okay? And the last one is email, and you might say, what do you mean by email? Well, here's the beauty of it. If you're on the run, you can copy this, I guess, address, if you will, to your clipboard, whether it's on your phone or on your computer. And instead of having to, oh, the listing agent sent me these documents, now I need to download them and then I have to upload them, you can email them directly into your loop. So you can forward to this email address, and it'll forward any of those PDF documents, of course, directly into the loop if you choose to do that. Julie?
Does each loop have a separate email address?
Yes, ma'am.
Forwarding address?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They do. And if you notice right here, I'm going to see if I can highlight this section. See where it says Rep Docs? Each folder has its own email address. So it'll email into the folder that you have copied into. So it's great. I mean, you have to get pretty good at remembering to save this for every one that you do. Yes, Daniel.
How many file folders do you have per loop usually?
It depends on the deal. So let's say you have a listing. Let's say you go under contract on your listing, and for some reason that contract falls out. We know that 30% of your business may fall out throughout the year, statistically, about 30%. So let's say that contract falls out. You might archive that, and you might have a different file. Let's say you have a title, something or other that's happening, or you're ordering a survey, or there's different documents that you might need. You can split it out however you want. The most important thing that I want to get across to y'all is I don't want to see 50 documents in one folder, because that is, unless they all pertain to that specific contract, it's a little challenging to have to sift through. Yeah, so the OCD in me would say just divide them as necessary. You know, you shouldn't have, I mean, 3 or 4 would be probably the max, you know. Sometimes when you're just starting, you could have your rep doc file, your contract docs, and then your compliance docs down below. So you might have how to put a dot loop together. So you can always go into that, and it's right there in the loop if you wish. So, Julie?
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions.
I appreciate them.
So you're talking about with each file folder, you want sub-file folders broken down, like contract, seller's disclosure, all those in separate folders?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. So any kind of representation docs would be, let me go back out of here. I'm going to close this real quick. So, okay, so typically your folders are going to look like this. All your representation documents would be in one. All your contractual documents would be another. And the reason why is, let's say your buyer goes under contract and this contract falls out. You can archive this without having to mess with all these or copy them or do anything. You just start another new contract folder. You don't have to do that way. You can put them all in one, but it makes everyone's life easier if you have them separate.
Your docs would be like your buyer's agreement, your IABS.
Correct.
Your general notice.
Correct.
And your contract docs would be your 1 to 4 and so on.
Well, let's look at that. Perfect. So to add a document, let's go into representation documents. You're going to click on Add Document. And just for the sake of this, I'm going to move it up. So you can do that. You can drag and drop. So I'm going to go right into templates, and it's going to pull up whatever templates you have saved. Now, you see that I have Kristen's templates over there. I'm not going to go into this today because that will take us on a huge bunny trail, and we have a lot to cover. But you can fill out templates. It's just that if you choose to do this or you accidentally do this, I've had a couple people this last week accidentally fill out their own templates and save them over there. that's fine. Just know that Mary doesn't update those. So if a form goes out of date, a new one comes in, and you're still using the one in Kristen's templates, those will not be updated, so you will be out of compliance. Any questions on that? All that means is every time there's a new form, you will be heavily notified way before it actually comes out. And then when it does come out, she'll change them out in the actual templates and however she has them set, and then you can redo a template. Okay? So for this purpose, we're going to go ahead and do buyer contracts because we're doing a buyer. So the first thing that you do, that I always do, is I always put my checklist in there. So if it's a listing, you would put a listing checklist. For buyers, I'm going to do a buyer checklist or a contract checklist. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a buyer's rep, and the best way to do it is to use the search little magnifying glass up here and type in whatever it is that I need. So brokerage, so the IABS. So that's the information. See how it comes up there? Any questions about what I'm doing? Is everyone clear on where I'm at? Okay. Typically you'll have general information. Notice to a buyer, that is now required for compliance purposes. And then wire fraud. Okay, and you also can skip around. So if you need to go to, let's say, the TREC forms, you can click on either of these, let's say TAR, and I wanted to do addendum for backup contract for whatever reason. You can click this and it'll still copy with all the other ones. It doesn't uncheck anything if you change out of there.
All of these forms are not going into that rep folder, are they?
So the ones that I've just checked, yes, they are.
But they don't really apply to that rep folder, right?
They actually do. Yes, sir, they do. So my representation documents, this is what I'll have them sign before I ever put them under contract on a buy, on a purchase. So they'll have their IABS, they'll have their buyer-tenant representation agreement, they'll have the general information notice to a buyer, and the wire fraud. And of course, any other documents that may be important, like maybe their pre-approval letter would go in this file. Any questions on this? Okay. So, and
Part of the compliance documents, right, that you kind of combine in there, but they're also required up front, so.
say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Part of those that you got in there are compliant docs. So don't you say you normally separate the compliant docs from the rep docs from the contracts?
The only compliance docs that I think you might be talking about is the contract checklist. Okay, I'm saying like for you, when you write your first deal, you may choose to have the simplified process. There's a form that's called, or the paperwork policy, that is already in a different loop. You may choose to copy this into loop so you can refer to it while you're working in your loop. You can do that. I would put that in a separate folder. But this is what Mary's looking for. Do you have these? Are they filled out? Are they signed? A lot of people will ship that buyer-tenant rep over. Their buyers will sign it, and then the listing or the buyer's agent forgets to initialize and sign themselves. It's fairly easy to do, so just make sure you're going back, making sure you've signed everything. I've seen like 10 emails come back just like within the last couple of days that said, hey, you forgot to sign this form, can you please sign this? It needs to be signed for you to get paid, so just FYI.
So you
All right.
could create a third folder and call it like loop instructions or miscellaneous.
Yeah.
And you can put your checklists in there, just all your miscellaneous
Absolutely.
BS that Mary doesn't need to see.
Yes. Now the checklist, I prefer, she needs to see those. And the reason why is when you go, and she may or may not use them depending on your situation, but I always use these. So you'll fill it out. Okay. This is what pops up if you're going to autofill a document. This is great for y'all to see. And so you'll select the person, let's say it's Kristen, and you'll go down here and I'll say the closing date is the 31st of whatever. And then it'll autofill, and it'll start to autofill whatever I have in there, which is nice, which is why you want that, remember that view, the details section, you want to fill as much of that out as you can. The reason why this is important for compliance is, let's say here on the survey in T47, she can't find that in your loop, and she's maybe reviewing 10 loops, okay? If she can't find this, she's got to call you or email you or whatnot. If you have this in here and you have properly notated over here, the survey's been ordered by title company, expected blank, then she doesn't have to basically reach out to you. It's like, she's like, okay, this will be coming. And then what happens is the survey will come in, and like Julie asked prior, what happens after you submit this and something else comes in? Then something else comes in, you put it into the loop, and you resubmit. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. Okay? Yes?
Stuff, like I won't know what property address will be going in there when I first sign my.
Correct.
So you just leave all that blank.
This is a work in progress. So you will visit this often throughout every deal. You will see this often. You'll get so good at this. I promise. So the things that you might not have ahead of time, obviously, if you have a buyer and they haven't gone and put a contract in, you're not going to have a lot of this, but you will have the wire fraud, the IABS, the residential buyer tenant, the general information. Oh, there's that inspector information. I didn't put that in there. And that's a great way to go, oh, I forgot that document. Let me go get that, make sure I get it signed. So what's happening is a lot of agents aren't using this, and they're just off the top of their head trying to remember what documents need to go in the file. And then, of course, you know, we have late submission, and then 3 days before closing, you owe us like 5 documents before you can get paid. That's what we're trying to get better at. Okay. Any questions on why you would use this? And I put this in my representation document folder. I don't have it somewhere else. I have it with my representation documents, because no matter what, Mary's going to have to see this for whatever the situation is. She's going to have to see where everything's at. Okay? Any more questions on this or why I would have it in that folder? Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do, let's go ahead and save these, sure. And I'm going to submit a file. So once this is done, I'm going to take a jog from this little basics real quick. We're going to switch over before I submit this, because you're going to understand, I think, after we talk about the paperwork policy. So if you kind of flip your page, it's like 3 pages in, and it says Market Center Paperwork Policy. This is exactly how you should be submitting your documents. No ands, ifs, or buts. Occasionally, you will find that you have a deal that's maybe a cash deal and it's a 10-day close, or something changes and they move your deal up. That's fine. As long as you follow the appropriate steps in the process, you'll be okay. You just let Mary know, hey, I'm so sorry, this contract date has moved up, so I need you to review my file if you don't mind. That's fine. But what we're really working hard to do here in the Market Center is to make sure that everybody's files are ready and basically available for Mary to go through and to confirm that you guys are good to go way before closing, right? And so what's happening sometimes is that people are getting behind, or they're forgetting to turn in their loops, or you name it. And we'll have, I don't know, 20 submissions 2 days before the DAs are due, before closing. So let's talk about what happens. So if you're standing in a line, huh? Okay. So let's say, you know, I have a soon-to-be kindergartner, and every day she has to stand in a line, right? Someone gets to be the line leader, and she loves to be the line leader. I don't know where she gets it from, but so you're standing in line, okay? And you've done everything you needed to do. You've submitted on time. Your documents are there. You've, to the best of your abilities, dotted your I's and crossed your T's. Occasionally, you're going to forget a checkbox. That's okay. We're going to help you out, right? So you're standing in line. And the next thing you know, 20 people go and stand in front of you. The reality is those 20 people also need their loops reviewed. It's really important that we're protecting Avis's license, right? And so when those people rush in, of course we have to review those files. And sometimes there are issues with those files that might be bigger than 2 days, right? That might take longer than 2 days to get taken care of, which means they may have closings that are going up to closing or closing without a fully reviewed loop. Who can tell me what might happen if you go to closing without a fully reviewed loop? Who knows? Ryan.
You don't get paid on time. You potentially might have to sign a hold harmless. And then I have 72 hours to create a DA. And so if Mary can't get to it till later, and then now have 3 days or longer to do it holds back a lot of processes.
And so if you're holding back that process, imagine that first person that was standing in line. What are you doing for their process? It affects every single person in line behind you. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been there. I was an agent doing 8 deals all on my own going, I should have leveraged this out because I'm crazy. I can't get this done. Lauren?
Isn't there something about if they don't do their paperwork on time that it's possible E&O is not applicable to that transaction?
Well, that's why you would sign a hold harmless. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mark?
So, I know a kid that, he had the listing on some land.
Okay.
And the buyer gave him a 1 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And he accepted it, and it went to close and he hadn't submitted anything. And then after the closing, that's when he submitted the paperwork compliance. This was actually not in this office.
Sure.
And, so don't anybody think you can do that. And, but anyway, it came out later that, the buyer sued, we went to mediation because there was an issue with water availability.
Mm-hmm.
Well, had it gone through compliance, and I assume maybe it would work the same here, the compliance officer could say.
Ding, 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 red flag.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
why are you accepting a 1 to 4? Why don't you accept an unimproved, go back to the buyer and say.
Correct.
It's unimproved,
Correct.
right?
Yes, and that is the point, is
Things
that
can get caught.
correct. It's totally normal when you're new to not know what contract to use. You have my cell phone number, so you will call me first. It's okay. You will call me, and you will call me, and you'll call me, and you'll feel like you're bugging me, and that's okay. I want you to, because I don't want that to happen. Mary doesn't want that to happen. Lauren and Ryan don't want that to happen. Scott doesn't want that to happen. And I can tell you, Avis absolutely doesn't want that to happen, because her license is always at risk when y'all are out there selling real estate. And if she doesn't have a license, y'all are out of a broker. So we don't want that. So just remember, if you're coming up to a place where you forgot to submit your loop, it's okay, fine. Let's figure out where the gap is. And we do have a lot of folks that just need to figure out where their leverage can be in that, what their opportunity is to make sure that they have their ducks in a row, if you will, right? Those ducks in a row. Okay, so paperwork policy. So listings. The listing checklist is one thing you need to have in there. The listing agreement, all related addenda and notices, the MLS printout and tax records, and IABS. So, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I noticed in the checklist that you don't require a net sheet.
So that may have been lower in the checklist. Are you reading it right there?
Well, maybe I'm.
So here's the thing. Best practice is to always have a net sheet. So, and if you're doing a net sheet, you better have it in the loop, because that's your record that you've provided one to the buyer or the seller. And you should always provide one to both the buyer or if, depending.
Do you need to upload that to the loop or just keep it in your files on your computer?
I always upload it to the loop. It's up to you how you want to do it, but I don't necessarily think it's, yeah.
So I was just leaving it on my laptop. I never thought about uploading it.
Well, if you put it in the loop, it's gonna be there forever.
Well, no.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
They don't, like, loops don't delete.
Yeah.
That was actually a failure. They don't.
No, they only archive, which is why if you have things like a lease application as a social security number, you should darken that out before you save it in the loop. So that way it doesn't stay in the loop, because if the loop were ever to be hacked and the social security number's on there, you can never get rid of it, so it's available. Okay?
And you can archive it, but we still have access.
Correct.
Like me and Mary have access, no, even if you've archived.
Okay. So all required paperwork per checklist must be in the loop within 72 hours of execution of the listing. Okay, I'm going to say that again just in case anyone missed that. All required paperwork, all of it, per the checklist for listings must be in the loop within 72 hours of execution of the listing. I will also tell you, you are required to give your clients the paperwork that they signed. Okay, so make sure after it's signed and executed that they get a copy of it within 72 hours or sooner, hopefully. And I know that sounds crazy, but there's a lot of agents that forget to give their clients copies of the signed paperwork. Sometimes agents will do, like, when people used to sign things by hand, And so if you do that and you upload them to Loop, make sure you're sending a copy over to your client. Okay?
But if you're doing it through DOTLOOP,
They should have a copy, yes. Yes, but nothing hurts to download into a PDF and email it back over to them. Yeah. Yes, ma'am? Did you have a question? Okay. No, that's okay. Okay, so all required paperwork per checklist must be in the Loop within 72 hours of execution of the listing, and then you'll submit for review, which I'm about to show you what that does, and we'll also talk about the status, okay? The next, for contracts, you'll have the contract checklist, which we were looking at earlier. We'll have the fully executed contract, all related addenda and notices, including but not limited to all amendments. So again, you're going to have multiple amendments throughout the contract. You may have one to extend the option. You may have one to negotiate repairs. You may have one to change the price after an appraisal. That doesn't mean that you're not going to submit them all, and I'm going to show you what that might look like, okay? The IBS and buyer rep, and then of course any new home builder contracts, and then of course title can, if you have a buyer that has gone and signed with a builder, sometimes the builder doesn't directly give you the fully signed builder contract. So you can just call the title company and they would happily email you one over. If they give you trouble, call me or call Scott and we'll make it happen, okay? But just know that you still have to have those in the Loop because we have to be able to have those for our records. So for contracts, all required paperwork per checklist must be received within 72 hours after execution, and then or 24 hours after option ends. Now let me talk about that for a second. So if you have a deal and your deal has a 15-day option period on a 30-day close, do you think that it is better to go ahead and submit immediately after execution or wait till 24 hours after that 15th day? Immediately, thank you. Yes. Okay, and the reason why is because especially if it's a tricky deal, you're unsure about something, the earlier submit it and send Mary a little note, hey, this one was kind of tricky, I'm not sure about this. She has time to review it. But if you wait until the 16th day of a 30-day contract, you're going to be one of those people rushing in line at the very end, kind of cutting everyone else, okay? So make sure, be aware. If you have like a 5-day option and, you submit it 24 hours after that, you'll be fine. It'll be okay. But if you have a long option or you have other stuff going on or whatever that might be, then you'll want to submit it immediately after execution. And that would just be a best practice. Any question on that? Julie, your face kind of went, I'm not sure. Okay. Any other questions on submitting a Loop? So how soon will you submit a Loop after you sign a listing and it's executed? 72 hours. You don't have to whisper it. 72 hours. I said it like 5 times. You're right. Yes. How about after you go under contract with a buyer? What are your choices? Yeah. 72 hours after execution of the contract or 24 hours out of option. Okay. And if you've extended option twice, you might as well just turn your Loop in, please. Okay, and then of course leases. There is a lease checklist. I suggest you use that very closely with leases, and I'm going to plug this right here because I've had 4 conversations recently where people may not have been aware. But when you sign the policy and guidelines when you come in with KW, you also are agreeing that you will take a lease class every 2 years to stay competent. If you haven't taken a lease class in the last 2 years and you've been with us longer than that, or if you're newer, you want to go ahead and take that lease class or else you probably will not get paid for leases. Okay, so I'm just going to plug that right here. Y'all heard it. I'm the person, if you want to call Mary or Avis and go, what do you mean? Go ahead and pull up your policy and guidelines. It's something that you signed and agreed to, so make sure you're taking those classes. Yes, sir.
How do we get credit for that? How do you guys know we took it? Because I took it with Greg.
Yeah.
But I didn't pay for it.
Okay.
So,
are you? Were you doing your, because you're starting your SAE time frame? Okay, so that's a good question.
We have sign-in sheets.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah,
And
that'd be perfect.
Typically, I'll pull a list every couple months, like whenever we're having the next class, and say, hey, Greg,
Yes.
who's in classes last time, and I pull everybody who's either brand new or has done a lease, and then cross off people who I know have taken it and who haven't. So
Yes.
we'll find
Great
you.
question.
'Cause I did the same thing. I didn't pay for it, but
That's why I suggest that, especially on those required classes, broker responsibility or your leasing, that if
that we do look at.
You couldn't have asked for.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
licensed yet.
Yeah.
License yet.
All right, so we're going to think great questions. So leases are also within 72 hours after an accepted lease. Now with leases, sometimes you have a challenge getting the lease into the loop. If the rental company or the leaser or the landlord or the property management company doesn't give that to you, then you need to make a note in your leasing checklist. I am still struggling with getting the copy of the lease. I will put it in as soon as possible and just let one of us know, okay? So processing instructions, it's going to say all new listing paperwork in a created file through My Transactions you're going to submit for review, which I'm about to show you. You're going to enter in the MLS, and then you can edit the listing through KWLS. If you don't know what that is, that's a different class. When under contract, you're going to send the loop or the new folder through DOTLOOP into the compliance queue. And then, of course, with the most current documents. So let's say here you have a residential buyer-tenant representation agreement. And let's say you've already submitted this, but they want to extend the time that you are representing them. Let's say you've only signed it for 3 months, they needed another 3 months. You would put the amendment in here and then you'd resubmit for review. What we have a challenge on is when you have a contract loop and you have had like 5 different amendments and only one of them is executed, what you'll do is you'll archive the ones that aren't valid anymore. So over here in these 3 dots, you see this right here, archive? You'll click that and will disappear. Boom, gone. The beauty of that is even though, yes, Mary and Ryan can go in and see any archived documents, we don't have to review those right off the front. So if I'm going in and looking at your loop and I see 5 amendments, I'm probably going to call you and say, I mean, I could probably figure it out, but I'm not going to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out what your amendments are and which ones are real and which ones are not, which ones I'm reviewing, okay? So just get rid of the old ones by archiving them and leave the newest or cleanest forms up there. Any questions on that? Now, if you accidentally archive something, all you do is go over here. Where am I at? Hold on. Where's show? Oh, thank you. That's why I'm like, wait, where's it at? So right here it says show archived, and that will come up. See, it's grayed out right here. If you go back over to those little 3 dots, you go to the bottom, and you click unarchive, and then I'll go right back to. Huh?
I said, that's much easier than the way I've been doing it.
Well, good. I've taught you something. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go back to this real quick because I've been talking a lot about submission for review, and you guys are like, what does that even mean, right? So you have now done this, and let's say your contract documents are full of signed and executed documents, and you are in either within 72 hours of an executed contract or 24 hours. I'm just going to put that in there for purposes, right? Or within 24 hours of the option period ending, and now it's time to submit the loop. So the first thing I'm going to go up here is click Submit for Review.
Yep. Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't have to do a checkbox?
Is it going to make me do all of this? Yes, hold on.
I checked, it looked like it says contract role, I'll check that box at the
Oh,
top.
yeah, she just has to fill out additional details before she can submit.
And then all I do is.
No, you don't have to pre-check these because you're really resubmitting the entire folder. That's what happens. You're not, and correct me if I'm wrong, PJ, what do you think? Right? They're resubmitting the whole folder.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Okay. So you don't have to say, oh, this is general information, that's a new contract, let me check it and then submit. You just go up to Submit for Review.
Just that one document.
Right.
Even if you added just one document and you resubmit, it resubmits
The whole thing. Because see, here's what comes up. This is typically the first thing you'll see if it has the address in here. It'll say Submit for Review. And it's going to ask, what folders do you want to submit for review? And you're going to say, well, since it was a buyer and I'm just under contract, I'm going to submit both. Over here, it's going to ask you for the type. It's either going to be contract or listing. In this case, it's a contract because it's a sale. And then over here, I give Mary little helpful hints about why I'm submitting. So for instance, just went under contract, or 24 hours out of option, or resubmitting for that updated amendment. Or here's those 2 documents that you asked me that I had maybe overlooked. Okay? You would put that little note. So she'll know that I'm and then you click submit. And what happens is these say submitted. Maybe. Okay, yeah. And then, so here's the other thing though, and I did this on purpose because we had this incident the other day. I've submitted, yay, I'm gonna get paid. No, the reason why is because nobody knows that your loop was submitted, because typically since Mary is reviewing, I don't know, how many transactions do we plan on doing this month as a market center? 200? Okay, over 200 transactions. She has filters, and those filters typically will be like under contract or active listing or whatever they might be. So if you don't have a transaction type or it's not the appropriate type, she can't see your transaction, and she won't know to look for it unless you call her and say, hi, I've submitted this, and she goes searching and realizes you forgot to put a status. So this piece is really, really important. So you'll go pick your status. This is a purchase. So I'll click purchase, and we are now under contract. So your options are here: pre-offer, under contract, withdrawn, or sold. I would be under contract. If I'm under contract, I'm going to have to put a purchase price. Okay, and then obviously it has my my closing date. Why are those things important? Can anyone tell me why your closing date is important on the top?
That's what we review online.
Yes. Remember, you're in line, and so we might have 10 people closing on the 31st, but you may be closing tomorrow. So we need to know that so we can review your file, whereas those other 10 people have some time that we can get to, okay?
But you do that after you submit it.
No, you do it before. But the reason why I said you do this at the start of your loop, just set your status. And again, remember, this is like a living and breathing system, right? So every time something changes, you might first be pre-offer, right? If you're playing around a loop or practicing, you can put pre-offer. But then once you go under contract, then you're under contract. Now, here's another caveat. Never mark your loop sold unless you have a check in hand. Some really wise birdie told me that once, okay? And the reason why is because they can't find your loop to review it. So if you are up to the deadline and you've submitted documents and you've marked this sold, for whatever reason, even if it's by accident, it's going to be very hard to find, okay? So just leave it under contract until you know for sure that you have received your check, you've gotten paid, the DA has been sent a title, all of that. But really, check in hand is when you should mark it sold, okay? And yes, there's a way you can filter it and do all those things yourself so you don't have every sold file you've ever done in your loop. And I'll show you that if we have some time. Any questions up until now? Yes, Ryan?
What if my closing date got moved up or pushed
Perfect
back?
question. Who can tell me how we would handle that?
Call Mary.
Nope, you just go right up here. Good try. So here's what would happen. Let's say if it got moved up tomorrow. Yes, you would change the date here and you'd call Mary and go, oh my gosh, Mary, my closing was moved up, blah, 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 okay? Or really, when you submit the loop, that's what that little message box is for. Like, hey, Mary, this is what happened. And really, you don't have to call her. She's great. If you send her a text and say, hey, this is what happened, just to let you know, I've changed the date, the closing date on my loop. Communication, people. It works in marriage. It works in life, right? So you got to communicate. Julie?
What does Mary prefer? Text, phone call, email?
Text or email is best, but text is key. Okay. She's pretty quick. And if she's super duper busy and there's a delay, you can always call myself. Ryan's available if you need. Scott's available. And of course, Lauren is available as well. If we have a door open or you want to text us, just let us know. If it's something urgent and you're like, okay, here's the reality. There's no such thing as, well, there's very few times there's actually a real emergency in real estate, right? I've heard of someone's listing being on fire. Yeah, that's an emergency. Okay. But the reality is what you feel is urgent We understand. I've sold real estate, I've been there, but what I don't want is you to live in that urgency. And the way you don't live in that urgency is you create systems around what you're doing so you don't have to live in chaos. Okay, and that's really important. And if you are starting to sell 2, 3, 4 deals a month, let's talk about leverage. What does it look like to hire a virtual assistant? What does it look like to hire a transaction to close coordinator? If you have an assistant, they need to be trained. They need to know the system. They need to know why. They need to know how. We're happy to do that. I'm happy to talk with them. I have a Zoom meeting. We're going to start a Zoom compliance call, so that way if y'all have questions on things or have had weird things come up on your transaction, what do I do? You'll be able to jump on that call and get questions answered. So, and if you're building a team, we're going to have the capability for assistants just to jump on and talk about systems and tools to be able to leverage that business so you don't have to be behind the ball. Okay? Because really, who are we in business for? Huh? Our clients. We're in business to help our clients. And if we do a disservice for them because we forgot to turn paperwork in and something was done wrong, even if it was unintentional, a lot of people get sued for unintentional. Let's just be real. I sit on many, many compliance committees, and we sit and listen to all the crazy stuff that agents do, and honestly, almost every time, it was an honest mistake, but they don't care because it's their investment. And so you're in business to service your clients and then take care of course, everybody wants to get paid, but this is the best way to do it, is not take anyone off, make sure everything's smooth, and then you're good to go. All right. So let me go back. So under processing instructions, Mary says here that it could take up to 14 days prior to closing plus 3 days to process a DA. So that's why I said if you've got that 15-day option period, don't wait till the 16th day. Just submit it as soon as possible, because then you can make sure you get your DA ahead of time. I cannot tell you how wonderful it feels when your buyer is freaking out and you're trying to figure out your paperwork and the title company calls you and says, "Where's your DA?" And you're like, "That's a good question. Where's my DA?" And then the next thing you know, Ryan's phone is blowing up and Mary's phone is blowing up, and they're busy making sure that everyone's getting to where they need to go. So make sure you're not that person. Just get it done ahead of time, and then you won't have to worry about it. So the next thing, there's some questions here about withdrawals, terminations, changes to DA. It says here, that's an important one. I'm going to talk about that. Changes to DA. If you've received a DA and need to have a change made, email the MCA team for a revised DA and add any subsequent documents into the existing loop and submit for review. So, and you have a way to notate here, over here, this little box with the 3 dots, that's a message box. And so if you want to write a note, let's say, to Ryan, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to put the referral down on here," right? That happens a lot, right, Ryan? Oh, there's a referral on that, surprise. So you would just find Ryan's name and do a message, or just email her directly. But this goes to her, so she'll, yeah, especially if it's transmittal day, because that just is more of a distraction. And yeah, so she sees these. I see them. In fact, anytime someone gets a file back, typically I see what's going on, and I'm writing your names down so I can call you and be like, "Hey, this happens like 5 times in the last month. Let's have a conversation about this," right? So I know you like to talk to me, but don't get that call from me because my high D comes out. No, I just want to make sure you have leverage. So any questions about notes here? All right, the next thing you're going to do is, how do you get paid? All right, so I guess we have to go back to the main thing. All right. So I'm going to show you something, what not to do. Is everyone understanding? I'm showing you what not to do. Right now, this is don't do this. Okay, under view details, because this is how I was trained to do it, and it made more problems than it was worth. At the bottom, well, before I do this, does anybody know what the sheet is called that you have to fill out so you can get paid? Julie? Okay, George. Green sheet, like the color of George's shirt. Green.
No, it's for money.
That's right.
Used to be a blue sheet.
Okay, well, that's good to know, blue sheet. So there's this little thing down here called submit to green sheet. Don't do that. Don't use that button. Just pretend it doesn't exist, but I'm telling you because you might go ask Lauren, don't use that button. Lauren?
Why?
Well, you tell me why.
Don't you use that button?
Because it causes more problems than it's worth. It doesn't connect half the time.
That's correct. It doesn't connect and you say, well, I did a green sheet and Ryan's gonna say, I don't see it. You're going, well, I did it. And then now you go back and forth and you've had 2 days of still not having a DA.
Everyone good on that? So, Kristen, how do you do a green sheet? All right, so if you go up here to technology, so now we're back at my KW. Okay, so you're going to go over to technology and you're going to go down to green sheet. And that's going to take you to this page. Okay, and if you haven't created a green sheet yet, you're going to click create a green sheet. Okay, and then it's going to ask you a bunch of questions like, are you the listing agent? You are never the listing agent.
Always say no.
Is this a KW listing? It's never a KW listing.
Say no.
And then you start to fill out your green sheet. Once your green sheet is done, you'll submit it, and then you'll get a copy. And you can't you get a copy? And yeah, you can print it and put it in your loop if you like. That's also a good thing to do.
That is a good thing to do because when do you create a green sheet? Question is, as soon as you submit for review your contract, you're already at your computer, you pretty much know all the answers to all the questions, and then you could just print it as a PDF form and their printable view, and then drag and drop it into your loop, and you know you've done a green sheet.
Correct. And if for some reason you need to go change that, you can go to, I believe it'll be accepted because it's our most of the time, right? Partially accepted?
Yeah, it'll be under submitted.
Will it be?
Until I accept it.
Okay. So
why is it never an agent and why is it never a deal?
just trust me, no.
It doesn't syndicate.
It's just,
The
yeah.
reason is if you are the listing agent and you check yes, then it's gonna want you to fill in it goes to KWLS, which is another system. And if the listing is not actually in KWLS and active in there, then it's not gonna autofill. And all it wants to do, all it's asking for that is to autofill just a few fields. It does not mess anything up, your numbers or anything. And if it's a Keller Williams thing, again, it wants to autofill. But then there's no reason to add the listing because the purpose of KWLS is to get the listing sold and it's already sold. So just click no now.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, let me go over some of the compliance review statuses. So if you go in at the top of your file, it will say either compliance review, it'll say ready for DA, approved for listing entry, DA created, active listing, or attention agent not compliant. And typically if it's not compliant, Mary will give you a little notice to why it's not compliant. Resubmitted or duplicate. So if you go over in the loop over here, in notifications, it will say those in that notification section, okay? So if you're not sure what that is, the statuses are in this paperwork here that you can review. The last page of this I'm not going to go over because it's basically everything we went over, just a simplified version. So keep this close with you. You're going to have to go through submission a couple of times before you get this down pat, and that's okay. Again, if you have questions, let me know. Did I handle everyone's most important thing that they wanted to get out of the class? All right. Okay, let me get 3 ahas, and you guys are free to go. What did y'all learn today? Julie?
I never knew a checklist existed.
Well, there we go. I'm glad that you came. That's an important one. Yes, Mark?
I didn't know that you could go back and get something that you had already archived. I didn't know that.
Wonderful. That saves a ton of time from having to copy, paste, or redo. Yeah.
And let me ask this to make sure it's
Sure.
So you don't care if we don't use KWLS? We don't have to put it in KWLS? Okay, I didn't know that.
You know from what you did, how much of a pain in my butt it is.
Right.
You don't enter it, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
You don't have to.
Okay, great.
Yep. One more aha. One more. Y'all didn't learn nothing?
Submit the green sheet when you submit everything else.
Yes, otherwise you got everything done and you didn't get paid. All right, well, as you know, you have my phone number. If you don't, my cards are on my desk. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Did I do okay, PJ? Awesome, okay. All right, well, you're free to go. Have a good day. Yay, thank you.
What I've been doing is send the whole file over. That's what it is. So I just took it those minutes. I just resent the whole thing all over again. I thought, at one time in our lives, when they first started this, they said, don't keep submitting it and remitting it, because it keeps going. I mean, we did add to it, it was in a, it was one more, yeah, something like that.
Thanks for being here. Hey, my pleasure. Trust me, it makes my life easier too.
Yeah, if they're talking to me, yes, yeah, you're talking to me.
Like truthfully, best practice is figure out one document that you're going to use.
Well, I've got an idea now, but I've got like 3, is there any way that,
Contract or the other.
I guess an exception can be made for the 3 leases that I have coming over? Because they're already closed and done.
You have free cap for a month, right? Or don't you?
Because here's the deal.
Aren't you cap managed for a certain period of time?
Yeah.
Yeah, then you wouldn't have to pay if you're cap managed.
But what I mean is the buyer's reps that they used over there was not the standard one. It's like a one.